Hi, it's me, Normal Gallagher fan. It's now midway into Aventuring's banner, and only recently did we get the 2.2 livestream. In the span of my first theory video's release, I've gotten so many comments of different takes, additions, and theories in response to my theory. I'd like to say I'm grateful and in awe about it. I won't get too sappy, but I am genuinely surprised at the overall reception of my first spoken video, and I'm glad to have a small gathering of people discussing Gallagher. I initially wanted to save the second video to be the aftermath of whatever happens in 2.2, but considering there's still so much to talk about with Gallagher, I thought it'd be fun to have a follow-up video. I wanted to respond to a lot of the comments, and I did with some of them, but I felt like it was better for me to collate the common responses into different themes and topics we can cover. This is where I can give my own input and thoughts about these responses. Now keep in mind I can't fit in everything, but I felt like this is a good middle ground where I can summarize the key observations made, show where I've made my own research and analysis based on these observations, and come back with my own perspective. A proper discussion, if you will, and by all means, let's continue the discussion here, because rest assured, even once this video's done, I'm sure there's still a lot more that I haven't picked up. So while we're grinding to grab Aventurine, build him, farm Jades for Robin or Boot Hill, or if you're me, put off building Pela even though the lack of her is the entire reason why my ACHERON does whittle goo goo gaga baby damage, while my Gallagher is sitting pretty with fully maxed traces, almost 200 break effect, and an intention to make a sub-DPS battle medic alternate build, and especially in the grid event realizing how fun Aventurine would be, since I love follow-up damage units, especially in Simulated Universe, and then with my only two pulls, I get him, and now he's level 80, and I intend to use my fuel to build him, putting off Pela once more, and then having to complain why my ACHERON is doing this much damage with okay stats like this, and then Arlecchino comes out, and this happens. Hello? While we're winding down in the latter half of 2.1, why don't we consider this video like a hangover meal from the roller coaster that was the Trailblazer quest, and a pre-drink for the shit show that's about to come? I would say this was going to be a more casual and unhinged video discussing Gallagher and a little bit of Misha, using what we theorized in the last video and whatever we're going to unpack here to sort of piece together what we know, but in writing this script, I think it might be longer. Good fucking lord, I've effectively gone insane. Look at the word count, it's more than my exegesis for my honors degree. Anyway, to recap from the last video, I made the theory that Gallagher is a meme, based on him having similar memetic characteristics to Memory Zone memes, and based on the evidence that the Watchmaker has powers similar to the Enigmata. I also broke down how his mixology, death, and story symbolism correlates to this theory, as well as color in a bit more of his character. So when I go into this video, I'm using this theory as a base for my line of thinking. Anyway, I think I've yapped too much. Let's get to the first part. Part 1. Something Unto Death 2. I'm back in the fucking building. The first video I only really covered like 5% of Gallagher's design, but as observed by many viewers, there are way more hints to his connection to Something Unto Death than what I brought up in my previous video. The most prevalent observations made by the comments were the pattern on his lapels and tie match the silhouette and patterns of Something Unto Death. Something Unto Death has a lot of three-pronged claws. Gallagher himself wields a three-pronged claw with a similar silhouette and pattern to Something Unto Death. The border on his badge looks a lot like the halo on Something Unto Death. There's a lot of little things that I noticed when I decided to observe Gallagher's design myself as well. For example, his shoes and the pattern on his garter, his strap, have the same claw shape, while the unique shape that connects the strap to his belt looks a lot like the spine-like tail on Something Unto Death. The wing-like pattern on the back of his waistcoat resembles the dual wings on the lower half of Something Unto Death. Furthermore, even his one-sided cape is on the same side as Something Unto Death's singular arm wing. Another key observation by viewers was that magenta, the color pointed out as Gallagher's color, as well as the colors of eyes or cores of Memory Zone memes, is a color that isn't naturally occurring. In short, it has no visible wavelength. It's a color that's perceived by our own brains by combining pure red and blue light. Even more fitting to the Gallagher as a meme theory, considering that both Gallagher and memes were created from a diverse range of human appearances to memories and emotions. Additionally, we can even use this bright magenta as indicators due to its high contrast. For example, if a model is missing in texture, like this here. Other people in the comments have also pointed out that in one of the first missions in Act 2 is called Devil in Velvet, and that the devil in question could be Gallagher, especially considering he's the only character to wear velvet. Because Gallagher makes no appearance at all in this mission, we assume that it's either related to the distrust towards Aventurine, who clearly has an ulterior motive, or about ACHERON, who's a much more powerful and dangerous entity than first perceived. But as observed by viewers, and I'm sure many others, Gallagher is the one who wears velvet colors, and is the one who has the ominous and shocking twist at the second act. Now, I tried to find something within the literary reference itself that could correlate to Gallagher, but I can't find much on the book Devil in Velvet by John Dixon Carr to make a detailed analysis. But this is where I can open the stage to you. Maybe you can find something that I really couldn't. It was easy for me to write off these details, as I was so used to Hoyoverse character designs having a lot of asymmetry, layers, and various details, sometimes to an excessive degree, in my opinion. But looking at Gallagher's design, a lot of major hints of his character are literally on him, oiled up, and it's also easy to consider that a lot of the design is a mismatch of the people he imitated or grafted onto himself. But now with clarity, it's much more than that. It's literal proof in the pudding of his connections to Something Unto Death. Speaking of Something Unto Death, I decided to look more into it. I decided to first look into the list of victims, a document that records the list of victims of Something Unto Death's killings. Within the list, there are annotations that deduce certain characteristics of Something Unto Death. Let's break each annotation down. Death can ignore physical barriers. We've seen multiple times how Something Unto Death gets from point A to point B by defying physical logic. It also makes me think about how Gallagher's playstyle revolves around break effect and its shattering of toughness, quote-unquote barriers. Death is swift and skilled in disguises. We can attribute Death being a master of disguise as an inherent trait of Memory Zone memes, who are able to imitate entities such as creatures, monsters, and humans. We've also established this for Gallagher in the Gallagher is a meme theory. Death seemingly prefers to attack vulnerable individuals. This seems more like a predator instinct to me rather than anything indicative to Gallagher or the idea of him orchestrating the killings. I still stand firm that not all of the quote-unquote deaths are prompted by Gallagher, and it's more like Death being a predator who lurks in the shadows and strikes the vulnerable, who in nature are the easiest to target and thus a higher success rate, and has less risk of retaliating. Two of Death's cases are related to the ocean. I think this attributes to the constant theming around the sea and ocean for Penacony. For example, whenever you load into the dreamscape, the loading screen is akin to sinking into the ocean. Death has the ability to imitate and learn. Obviously, considering it's a meme, it has the capability of doing that within its innate nature. It rings strongly for Gallagher, who observed and imitated aspects from 52 family members develop his own physical appearance. An added detail is that Chauvin was the one who taught him mixology, remarked on him being an incredibly fast learner. There is likely a mastermind behind Death. It seems to be the case that Gallagher has mastery over it, but it's also evident that there's a mastermind behind Gallagher, or that there's something greater that's influencing the killings to take part in the first place. Maybe the dreamscape collapsing. Death attacks more in dark or dim environments. When Gallagher unleashes Something Unto Death on Sunday, he flicks open his lighter and the room dims. It's only upon the act of flicking off his lighter, darkening the room, does Death strike. It's corroborated by the incident that the annotation is attached to, where the victim is taken upon the blowing of birthday candles. In the White Knight music video, on Gallagher's scene, the lighting and tone of the scene shifts the moment he flicks it off. I'd like to believe this is what he uses to command Death meme, sort of like a dog whistle. Gallagher being represented as Death Major Arcana in his I'm 13 phrase has a lot of meaning. In the context of Major Arcana, Death represents change, transition, and rebirth. To die is to be born anew. It's something shared by a lot of comments and by myself. It represents a lot for Gallagher in Something Unto Death, both holding the power of quote-unquote death in a way that actually transitions the victim to somewhere different, making them cross the barrier to the other side. As mentioned in my previous video, the major arcana represents transformation, complementing both of these entities as memes who have transformative abilities that let them alter themselves. I know I've said this in my previous video, but I think it'd be worth touching up on again. In the context of Gallagher, quote-unquote death equals transformation, change, and transition. I think revising this point is what really helps solidify Gallagher's role in the story as less of a threat than perceived, and rather as a reflection of what has passed, what is happening now, and what is to come. Sort of like a basic tarot reading. Like a reflection in the mirror, like the cycle of time and life itself. Not just about him, but the nature of Penacony and the dreamscape. It's all well and good that we've pointed out his literal connections to the entity, and even the symbolic, how intertwined they are with each other, how it reflects themselves and their true nature and identity, and how it reflects their role in the world. But what else could we say about Gallagher and his connection to quote-unquote death, and Something Unto Death? When I think about the connection between Gallagher and Something Unto Death, I think about Passive, an NPC from Genshin Impact who's a Melusine, but she's strongly implied to be a bishop. She shares similar coloring and patterns to baptismal bishops, and the same reptilian eyes as them. She can interact with and resonate with other bishops, and in the quest you help her in her place of the consequential mini-boss encounter is a bishop. Also, her name is literally Bishop backwards. I like to think Gallagher himself could be a death meme, maybe even another Something Unto Death if we want to get crazy, if we want to go wild in absolutely silly boy behavior. I mean, pets and their owners sometimes share similarities with each other. Perhaps it's why he has the ability to control another Something Unto Death to do his bidding when he wishes. It takes one to know one after all. And in defense to why I bring up Genshin Impact in the sacred grounds of Honkai Star Rail back away, keep in mind that Hoyoverse reuses a lot of the same themes, characters, archetypes, and story tropes amongst their games, which isn't a bad thing. Dream and subconscious fuckery slaps. Yes, Hoyoverse, make another purple-haired Japanese-coded woman who's down bad for a pretty lady. The children yearn. ACHERON herself is a Raiden Mei XP, whose story ranks strongly of Honkai Impact 3rd lore, but in a scenario where the Yuri wasn't there and didn't prevail to the point where well of HI3 fame acknowledges those similarities. In Genshin, you have the Raiden twins A and Makoto, whose names derive from Mei, and A's boss form share similar design aspects to the Hersher of Thunder's design. You also have characters like Himiko, Seele, Bronya and Silverwolf, Sushang, Yanqing, who's a younger version of his HI3 counterpart, and Luocha, who again, well, had a strong reaction to because of his striking resemblance to Auto Apocalypse and Void Archives, who apparently was also with him when they got isekai'd into HSR's universe. And those two are like the same guy, but not really. Void just, I don't know, man. I asked my friend one time about him and they went, do you want the long story or the short version? In this rambling tangent, I just wanted to bring up that I'll be pulling similar ideas or tropes from other Hoyoverse games, and I'm not insane for doing so because it's what they do, and after all, the universes are canonically connected. And in Gallagher being a death meme, Something Unto Death or not, is not so outrageous, even looking as far as comparing it to other Hoyoverse games. Part 2. Doggy. One of the major things I cut out was Gallagher's dog theming. At the time, I omitted it from my theory as I couldn't find a correlation between the dog theming to the meme theory, as easily as the death and mixology symbolism. Thankfully, you guys had pointed out a lot of things in relation to Gallagher and his dog theming that I missed or brushed over. Thanks to all your observations, I did my own digging and analysis and came to my own conclusion. So, what do we mean by his dog theming? Gallagher addresses himself as a dog or a hound numerous times through the story and his daily text. Sunday also calls him a dog during their confrontation. He has paw prints on the lining of his cape, the lid of his hip flask, his healing brew, and on the bottom of his shoes. His first eidolon is called Salty Dog. This was pointed out by a lot of viewers, and I even made a tweet and a Tumblr post joking about it a while ago, but dogs are known to have a lethal reaction to chocolate due to the high traces of caffeine. Gallagher has a line where he talks about hating chocolate. Another common observation made by viewers was within his line about Misha. In it, he talks about at his age he was biting everyone, similar to a puppy when they reach their teething phase.
Misha's a sensible kid. Me? At his age, I was just a little terror, biting everyone in sight.
He also discerns that Sunday is someone he distrusts due to his scent alone. Dogs have more sensitive noses, fork found in kitchen, and scents are what they use for hunting, familiarizing with their surroundings, and for getting to know other living beings. One of his daily text conversations has him adopt a stray robot dog. I'm 13 has another layer of meaning. I mentioned this in the written version of my Gallagher meme theory, and it was pointed out in a comment, but 13 years in the context of dog years is fairly old, which aligns more with Gallagher's appearance and the amount of times his age has been commented on. Okay, so what if he's the world's oldest 13-year-old dog boy? What does that imply about Gallagher? A theory that I've seen circulate a lot is that Gallagher is a dog in reality. An interesting observation made by a lot of viewers is that Gallagher doesn't seem to have an appearance in reality as of 2.1 so far. It's very likely that his form is either non-existent or different to his mimetic being, perhaps a dog. I want to make a special shout out to Petrawood on Tumblr, who contributed their own theory about Gallagher, that he's either a hound or a hound statue in reality, who through observation of others formed a humanoid form, Gallagher. I encourage you to read the entirety of the theory for yourself, and this is where I found good sources of evidence and details I completely overlooked. Speaking of hound statues, have you seen these strange statues around the area? The ones that look like Doberman or jackals with glowing magenta eyes and a black collar? That follow you as you move? These are the aforementioned hound statues that I completely forgot about until viewers and other Gallagher fans pointed out to me. When you interact with them, they disappear in a puff of smoke, with the line more or less going, quote, "For a moment you are startled as the hound's presence appears less stable. The next moment it gets consumed by the distorted memory zone." Additionally, these hound statues are featured in the decor for Gallagher's section of the 2.1 livestream. One other thing. In Petrawood's theory, they bring up that there's no interaction with Gallagher in the Cosmodesy event, but there is instead an interesting encounter with a Doberman that has quite a resemblance. The Doberman is on guard with you, but depending on the success of your role, it either leaves you alone, trusts your scent, or bares its fangs at you. Let me read you a section of this Cosmodesy encounter. Quote, "Just as you prepare to return to your temporary abode, a taut but dexterous, but aging Doberman dog blocks your path. Its eyes are just as crimson as the patch of tufted fur underneath its jaw." Sounds like someone we know, doesn't it? When I was asking for their blessing to feature their theory on my video, they pointed out another thing. In the Sparkle Jazz Night live event, the animated parts feature hound statues, which all represent Gallagher. In the standoff between Gallagher and a disguised Sparkle, on her side is her signature goldfish, while on the real Gallagher's side, ironic, are two hound statues staring her down. In my point of view, the theory of Gallagher being a dog or being connected to hound statues in reality is really strong, and I feel like it's filled in a lot of gaps within my own theory, which I'll explain further on. One more thing. I think it's interesting to point out that Gallagher specifically has connections to the Doberman. Not just in the hound statues, but the crest of the Bloodhound family is a Doberman-like silhouette. The robotic dog Gallagher adopts is likely a bubblehound, who are modeled to look like Doberman. The logo for the Sparkle Jazz Night video features a Doberman to represent Gallagher. Doberman are a large breed of dogs originating from Germany. They're strong, athletic, and very intelligent, and were bred with the intention of being guard dogs. Now, we know very little of Gallagher's life. Hell, it's gonna take 2 or 3 videos talking about what the hell Gallagher is. but I wouldn't be surprised if the continuous imagery of the Doberman is what influenced Gallagher's earlier forms, likely before he developed a human form. It's also worth pointing out that the Doberman shown in all of these images and symbols have cropped ears, a former practice done on dogs like the Doberman where their ears are forcibly trained upwards. Originally, it was done either for cosmetics, to prevent health risks, or to prevent risk of predators from gripping onto them when they get into fights. Regardless of its supposed intention, in the modern age, cropping is a form of animal cruelty and is banned in a lot of countries. Now, I think in the context of Gallagher, it parallels the hold the family has over him. He describes being employed by the family, the same people who drove his master the watchmaker away and would shit-talk about, as a punishment that's perceived as forgiveness. He describes how they ripped out his fangs and crushed his spine, how the family have mutilated him into their submission. In a way, like the cropped ears of the Doberman, the act of taking Gallagher in is seen as a perceived kindness and for good appearances. But in reality, to Gallagher, it's a form of cruelty. In regards to the Gallagher is a hound statue or a dog theory, I propose something a touch different. When I first encountered them, I wrote them off as surveillance tools used by the bloodhounds. But what if I propose they are surveillance tools used for Gallagher instead? If he himself has a reason for not being present in reality, it makes sense for him to plant one there and scatter more about, helping him observe his intended targets for his mimetic behavior. It's probably how he learns and observes people to help develop himself, his lies Gallagher. After all, when you interact with them, they fuck off to the memory zone, where memory zone memes manifest from. Followers of the Enigmata, as you know, have the ability to produce memes, so it's not absurd for Gallagher to possess such a skill himself. I also think that one of his first forms as the Watchmaker's death meme was a Doberman, maybe to literally serve as a guard dog. Harkening back to my point of Hoyoverse reusing the same story beats, themes, characters, and tropes, animal or bestial familiars and entities who later become human are common. Look back at Genshin Impact. Spoilers ahead. Most of the Adepti that we know of have animal forms, but later developed into a human form to better serve humanity or to assimilate into it. Neuvillette is the Hydro Dragon Sovereign, who reincarnated as a human. His main character arc is his drive to find out why he reincarnated as a human, so he becomes the Eudex to observe and learn of human nature, and in doing so, in resonating deeply with the human experience, he grows an attachment and a strong sense of duty to the Fontanian people. Miko is a Kitsune, who interchangeably took the form of a small pink fox and her human form, and served as a familiar and loyal companion to her longtime friends and masters. Nowadays, she teases the idea of a fox form as a part of her usual tricks and ribbing, but you can see her fox form in her name card, constellation, and different forms of marketing. Perhaps Gallagher was a meme like Something Unto Death, who then took the form as the Watchmaker's guard dog and was one of his longest serving companions and servants. Now he's guarding something important to the Watchmaker and probably Penacony as we know it, leaving behind cryptic clues and being a bit of a trickster. He bares his fangs to those who pose a threat to his master, but he's more receptive and trusting to those he deems worthy of seeking out the truth of his master. During that time, he developed a human-like appearance to better serve Mikhail the Watchmaker, or maybe even out of the curiosity or wonder of life, took the form of the nameless Tyrannin first, and created these hound statues to observe the lives of multiple family members to become Gallagher. And with that, we've successfully taken the third and final key point about Gallagher and somehow found a way to mix it together with everything else we know and theorized. It's the beauty of sharing ideas and discussing them amongst each other, isn't it? It's almost as if we took all these multiple truths and ideas from different people and mixed them together to make one complete. Part 3. What is real? One of the major questions about Gallagher that I've seen in the comments is literally, is Gallagher real? Reiterating what was said before, Gallagher has yet to make an appearance in reality. Furthermore, there had been multiple instances of fellow bloodhounds not recognizing Gallagher despite apparently being a long-serving officer. Many points in the comments were made that if Gallagher is a mimetic construct of 52 family members, would this imply that he's not real? Personally, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. This is where my video is going to momentarily derail, star rail, to become a Misha video. Now, Misha the bellboy of the Reverie is also a strange entity of his own. He is one of the few characters bar the Trailblazer, ACHERON, and now Firefly in Act 2 to exist in this liminal space. He was shown greeting the Trailblazer when they first transition into the dreamscape. Furthermore, he exists both in reality and the dreamscape, but what's strange is only the Trailblazer and Clockie seem to acknowledge his existence. Now, I know you've got your hand raised, put it down, I'll get to it. I say all this, but Misha was shown being confronted and cornered by a band of thugs in Act 1. That's true, but I'll get to what I think about that. But let's wind it all back to Misha himself. Now, what exactly is the deal about Misha? Honestly, he warrants his own video, but the main hypothesis is that he's a descendant of Mikhail the Watchmaker. His voice is present in the first time you enter the child's dream area with Firefly. His name is a shortened variant of Mikhail, the Watchmaker's real name. He has powers of time manipulation, predominantly in his technique, and is shown in his stories to tinker with clocks, and even has a room of clocks as his retreat. Gallagher explains that Clockie represents the Watchmaker, who himself channels into his characters. Clockie only appears to the Trailblazer and Misha, who remarks that Clockie is his imaginary friend. Wanna get silly crazy? If we connect the dots, we can also imply that Mikhail was a Nameless. Amongst the three Nameless who settled in Penacony, there is the mechanic Legwork. It connects reasonably well to the theme of clocks, the Watchmaker, and Misha. One of Misha's main character points is being enthralled by the Trailblazing adventurers, sharing similar if not bigger reverence towards the Nameless like Gallagher. In his signature light cone, Ineligible Promise, Misha is given a Nameless badge presumably by his grandfather with the promise to quote-unquote guard this place well. Alright, so Misha's likely a descendant of the Watchmaker, who could possibly have been a Nameless. But what does this have to do with Gallagher? Quite a lot, actually! As we know, Gallagher was a creation by Mikhail, and given his nostalgic recollections when he makes the current generation of Nameless drinks, we can assume he was a close confidant for a long time, even to Mikhail's old age. This was brought up in Petrowood's theory, but in the child's dream there's a certain area you enter full of children's toys and gifts. What is present is a hound statue with the words, quote, "I'll definitely keep it safe. I promise you, Mikhail. So you need to keep yourself safe too," end quote, around it. Misha's grandfather left Misha on a mysterious journey, and both Gallagher and Misha have lines within their story about waiting for someone who was bound to never return, and both of them have been given a similar promise to guard something important. Gallagher and Misha are also seen in their stories or in a light cone to be in a room full of clocks. As of 2.1, Gallagher is the only one to have a line regarding Misha, and Misha is the only one to have a line about Gallagher. Trailblazer aside, their only team-up lines are only towards each other. This is suspected to change the more Penacony natives like Robin we have in the future. But in the Cosmodesy event, in the assignment where you plant something together, pairing yourself, Misha, and Gallagher together brings up a unique line. To me, it suggests they have a sort of parental relationship, especially given the nature of their lines. Gallagher is protective and caring in a way a father or an uncle figure would be, while Misha finds Gallagher to be admirable and gets excitable when he gets to team up with him. So, in true video essay fashion, I've taken you through a huge preamble that I promised would answer the initial question. And you're probably wondering when I'm gonna get to how all this is relevant. Don't worry, I'll get to it now. The reason why I went through this huge roundabout case about explaining Misha's potential true nature and the relationship between Gallagher and Misha was so I can effectively justify what I'm going to say. Just because we haven't seen Gallagher in reality doesn't mean he doesn't exist. He may exist in different forms like a dog or a hound statue, but I don't think we should write off Gallagher existing in reality just yet. After all, he could be real, but as something entirely different, something that befits his mimetic nature. It's only 2.1, it's fair to say we don't even have a fraction of the answers. In my last video, I talk about how the watchmaker possesses powers akin to those of the enigmata, notably the ability to alter the memories of his eyewitnesses, altering their recollection of his appearance to the point of even his gender presentation. Now, both Gallagher and Misha do exist and are acknowledged by more than just the trailblazer. Sunday very much knows of Gallagher after all, and Misha is an employee of the Reverie, both known to customers and co-workers alike, because at the end of the day, they're both employees of the family and are recognized as such. Bloodhounds don't recognize Gallagher, but he's still an active and present officer, and Misha is recognized by guests and staff alike, as well as the encounter by the gang of thugs. They can be seen and at the same time, not seen. Misha only seems to get consistent recognition from the trailblazer, even to the point of relief that they remember him, while there have been several altercations that happen because the bloodhounds don't recognize Gallagher, and yet he's also acknowledged, interestingly enough, by his key features like his brown hair and grey vest. What I hypothesize is this: they possess the same enigmata powers. It makes sense if they were descendants or mimetic creations of Mikhail. Perhaps passively or for an interesting reason, both alter the memories of their peers so they can acknowledge their existence, but not quite as Misha or Gallagher, but as the bellboy and the security officer. But what does this all mean? Mikhail gave the same promise to guard something important to Misha and Gallagher, likely his legacy. Their roles as doormen and guards suggest they are both guarding and discerning who's worthy of pursuing the watchmaker's legacy. The child and the dog, known for having intuitions often overlooked by people. Banging pots and pans! Excuse me! Excuse me! Hello! This is written post 2.2 livestream, but did you see the light cone? No, not Robin or Boot Hill's signature. No, not the Yuri light cone, but this one. This light cone pretty much renders all of my rambling moot, because it says everything it needs to hear. We can very much point out that the brown-haired man in the foreground resembles Gallagher, proving that at the very least, TYSM was the base or the primary appearance Gallagher took, including both the names being Irish and having jobs in security. And that shade of green and gray is shown in both designs. And then you look at legwork. Doesn't he look familiar? Doesn't he look like a certain little boy? 2 and 2 together, and we do have proof that legwork equals Mikhail, and in turn, Misha is the descendant of the watchmaker who was a nameless. Gallagher having a resemblance to TYSM makes even more sense. Mikhail/legwork created a meme who took upon the likeness of Mikhail's close friend / fellow nameless who became Gallagher, which ties all what I am saying together, ties the connection between Gallagher, Misha, the watchmaker, and the nameless in a neat fucking cocktail. Now, I did bump into this light cone earlier in leaks, but I didn't want to say anything about it, out of respect for those who didn't want to see leaks, and I don't want to tread upon the ethics of leaks just to prove a point, so I did more work just to find more evidence so I can effectively express my theory without it. But it does feel so good to finally talk about it. Okay, thank you. Back to my regularly scheduled script. We haven't seen much of Misha in 2.1, but he seems to be the one to guide the trailblazer and greet them in the beginning, his voice and presence leaving clues and points of intrigue about the truth of the dreamscape and the watchmaker. Gallagher in 2.1 is the second guide, disclosing the truth between the watchmaker and the family, offering cryptic clues and foods for thought for the nameless, while also warding off and biting those he dislikes. They both leave cryptic clues and mysteries, making the fog concealing the answer denser. Sounds like something the Enigmata would do. Speaking of the Enigmata! I think the one thing that's been bothering me has been the common misconception of Enigmata and Mythos, which in truth discredits Gallagher in a misguided way. It's true to believe we can't assume everything he says to be the complete truth, but in the same time it's a lot more nuanced than belief or disbelief. The reason why I now take Gallagher's words as a degree of truth is not because of good faith that he wouldn't lie to the trailblazer and nameless, who he clearly likes and respects, but because it's not entirely, if not just necessarily, how the Enigmata operate. While it's funny to attribute them as the quote, me when I lie and spread misinformation aeon, they are much more nuanced than that. We should start by reading Mythos' description in the databank. Quote, to stop questioning is to ask pouring rain to relinquish its faith in the glittering stars. Open yourself to the roaring river of metaphors, and you will find truth awaits. Hiding at the end of the night sky is the swirling rosy storm of a bygone age. Sharon Layton, a galactic laureate poet, self-proclaimed. It's a fallacy that all things can be experienced and recognized, but the living seek to produce prophecies of the unknown based on their limited grasp of order. But little do they know that the universe has no end and that the truth is but a fevered dream. To prevent the certainty that erudition brought about from destroying the possibilities championed by Mythos, Mythos conjured the fog of thought and the rain of sensation to reveal to the mortals the inexplicable truth through the four agents: morph, screen, riddle, and mirage. End quote. Let's also read this excerpt from the devlog about the Enigmata. Mythos wants to challenge the certainty of the erudition regardless of the consequences. Is it truly worth it? To erase the past and to distort the present for all the pursuit of an uncertain future? The Enigmata are created from the remembrance and conflict with the erudition, who fundamentally strives for omniscience and certainty. They seek to challenge the desire to know everything and for everything to be known, to keep things inexplicable and absurd and make us realize that trying to know everything is akin to trying to scoop out the ocean with only a cup. Nous and the erudition intend to lay down a straight and narrow path, no obscurities, no bumps, no diversions. Then in comes Mythos and Enigmata going, let's make it a maze. Now let's add a Silent Hill fog. Okay, now what if we add some fake exits, and perhaps even some traps? Yeah, this fucks. We are kept inquisitive, and pushing the boundaries and limits of what we know. Kept questioning. There is deception, but it's for the best interests of misdirection. Think of it as this. Nous is the parent and Mythos is the child. The child asks a question and the parent gives the clear and simple answer, but the child keeps going. But why? But why? But why? At every response, which gets more frustrated and simplified or bastardized or absurd, when the curtain is blue, we can simply say, because it's blue. Duh. Or we can push it further and go, well, the blue represents sorrow. And then further into, the blue representing sorrow is because it's associated with a symbol and a metaphor we already know. Into a video essay about how mixology correlates and perfectly symbolizes and represents a fictional character. The best way to explain how the Enigmata operates is this clip of one of my favorite prompts from the Dropouts, Make Some Noise.
Just the worst explanation of daylight savings.
Back in the 1920s, Henry Ford created the 8-hour workday with a lunch break right in the earlier part of the day, usually about 3 hours into the day, where you would make a sandwich of some sort. Only could eat sandwiches in Henry Ford's plant. And the problem with the sandwich meat was you had to get it from a store or some sort of market or a place like that. And then after you would get the sandwich meat, it's time to go back to work at that point. So what happened was, usually at nighttime, when you get into the bed, you usually put on some sort of like negligee or night clothing or something like that, which will then turn around and then you wake up in the morning time and the cows are crowing and the birds are mooing. And you would take breakfast, the same meat for lunch. You would then take that for breakfast because you saved it and now it's daylight.
What I'm trying to say is, to discredit what Gallagher is saying as lies and fallacies is not quite how the Enigmata works. Instead, look beneath the surface of what he's saying. Take a look at how us players interpreted his I'm 13 phrase, major arcana to death symbolism, dog years, and even a friend and I tried to decode it and translate it to trailblaze years and amber eras. They could all be right. They could all be wrong. But it gets us questioning more and more, analyzing and seeking more and more symbols and metaphors, trying to search through the absurd and obscure, and maybe then would have the truth, or maybe not. That's the joy of the Enigmata. Finally, let's look at Gallagher's light cone. What is real? Now, in the previous video I didn't touch on the light cone because admittedly I was still trying to wrap my head around it. but I think we can roughly interpret some of it to the best of what we know. Let's read the inscription. Quote, "Suppose if all the clocks are displaying the wrong time, if those bound to promises fulfilled their vows through betrayal, if those who sink into the realm of dreams never truly fell asleep, if the dead return to life only to discover their names have been stripped, if he blows out the flame, and in darkness there is but the eternal ticking of the timepiece." Now, let's try to decode it to the best of what we know. Suppose if all the clocks are displaying the wrong time. I don't much have a clue of what this could mean by wrong time. I wonder if it has something to do with the state of the dreamscape being a sort of isolated stasis. Perhaps there's a sort of inception at play to preserve the perfection and idealization of the dreamscape. If those bound to promises fulfilled their vows through betrayal. This one's fairly simple. Gallagher has sworn to a vow to the watchmaker that he probably couldn't fulfill until now, and in choosing to fulfill it, he has chosen to betray the family, his employer. If those who sink into the realm of dreams never truly fell asleep, I feel like this is meant to question how the dreamscape really is. It's like how you don't really quote-unquote die in the dreamscape. Dr. Ratio, in his note to Aventurine, said it's not death that is impossible, but dormancy, which is defined as a state of being slowed down or inactive. Perhaps what he's hypothesizing is that to truly quote-unquote dream, or to quote-unquote sleep, means for you to entirely surrender your physical form and body to the subconscious, which Dr. Ratio surmises is quote-unquote impossible. If the dead return to life only to discover their names have been stripped. Admittedly, this one stumps me. I'd have to leave that one open to you in the comments on what you think this means. The light cone is clearly a hypothesis. Gallagher poses a lot of questions about the dreamscape. As an enigmata follower, it's cryptic and falls in line in their belief to continuously question certainty and to keep poking and prodding as much as they can, because it's not about certainty, but the idea that there is not one answer or one true path to achieve the answer. There's a feeling of Plato's cave in this, and in the concept of the dreamscape, Gallagher in this dark enclosed room with only eternally ticking clocks around him, lighter in hand as he poses these questions about the very reality he's in, only to wonder if it's all real or true, if the fragments that construct the lie of Gallagher is real. He then shuts off the light, the ticking of the clocks mindlessly drone on. Regardless of his questioning, if the shadows in the cave are real or not, time marches on. Let's wrap it up. I want to reel it back into Gallagher. Thank you, Mythos and Misha, for stopping by. I want to color in as much of Gallagher with what we know from the previous video to what we discuss now. A supposed timeline, as you say. I'll also bring up some theories that are to connect some loose ends that I've yet to address. It'll be a doozy, so put on your thinking caps and listening ears. Ready? Either during or sometime after the events of the IPC rebellion, depending on how you interpret Gallagher's recollection of the historical event, the nameless mechanic, Legwork, now Mikhail the Watchmaker, used his powers of enigmata to create a meme, similar if not the same as something unto death. This meme either manifested as a dog first, or as the winged serpent that is something unto death, and then as a dog. The hound then served to protect Mikhail as his familiar. Within this time frame, to better serve Mikhail and their family, the hound took upon a humanoid form, taking upon the likeness of GRINNN, the Nameless's security officer who settled into Penacony alongside the mechanic Legwork and the surveyor Rosalina. The hound, now human, passively develops his appearance over time, observing the residents of Penacony through his eyes or through the magenta eyes of the hound statues that lurk around reality and the dreamscape. He observes 52 loyal family members and takes appearances from them, eventually grafting them into a complete Gallagher. An inordinate amount of time passes, Mikhail ages, and the rift between him and the family grow. Dissent is in the air, and eventually the watchmaker commits an egregious sin, far too unforgivable to the family. He is cast into exile, leaving behind a nameless badge to his grandson Misha, and a promise to quote-unquote his children, to keep something safe, a place, an it. Gallagher feels devastation and failure, believing he had done nothing to help his master and creator. How could he not? Like an upset and wounded dog, he believes it's his fault. Watchmaker's children are also ostracized by the family, and they seek out their missing creator, Gallagher included. But it was all in vain, and he is but a lost and abandoned dog, aimlessly searching and waiting for a master who will never return. He is welcomed by the family, a bittersweet arrangement to become a security officer for the Bloodhounds. To them, it's an act of forgiveness, but Gallagher can feel a tight collar around his neck, and a very short leash tugging on him. He feels as if he's being scrutinized, glared at, cast out in the cold, his chain tied to a stick as he waits and waits, doing his job like a good dog should. The dreamscape starts to decay, as the watchmaker anticipated. Perhaps, like all the other monsters, it takes an effect on Gallagher, who feels the instability within him. As he ages, he becomes jaded, sardonic, like any grizzled old man his age. He continues observing, developing his appearance, his life as he knows it. He's still waiting. He keeps an eye on Misha, his master's grandson, and they become sort of a found family. He takes up mixology from the one who welcomes and takes care of the monsters she deems her family, Chauvin of the Dream Jolt whole story. She teaches him all she knows, and he learns quickly. As a dog and a meme, he's good at that. Perhaps developing a concoction that would soothe the instability within him. At least now, he has something to do after his crappy cop job. Something that he likes, that he relates to, where he can observe and connect with people and fellow monsters. In the background of all of this lurks a monster, a meme so haunting and eerie, it takes the lives of different residents and tourists of the dreamscape, lurking in the shadows as another person, taking them in the blink of an eye. Gallagher knows of this beast. He is like it after all. He connects with it, able to master it, a hunting dog of his own. Invites to the Charmony Festival are sent out with an eerie hidden message. Gallagher is tasked to investigate it, and in that he realizes the message of the watchmaker. Is it Mikhail or a descendant who has taken upon the moniker? Gallagher feels as if it's a calling, a redemption for his previous failure. The duties of keeping it safe return to him like an old command. Gallagher and Misha play their parts, and upon the destined arrival of the current generation of Nameless, they guide them to seek out the watchmaker's legacy, in a way that makes them question everything, that makes them wander and get lost in a paradoxical sea of dreams. The famed Robin returns for the Charmony Festival, an oddity as he remarks that Penacony natives leaving is rare. She realizes her voice is off, harmony is in disarray. For her brother and her voice, she investigates a decaying dreamscape under the shadows, promising to relay to him what she finds. I propose that one of those findings happened to be Gallagher. He assesses her, finds her worthy of seeking out the secrets of the dreamscape and watchmaker. But time is running out fast. There's a sense of urgency. The Charmony Festival is closing in. The dreamscape is collapsing. Perhaps a warning that where she'll go is a path of no return. Something has to explain why she couldn't have told her brother immediately. With his claw, he slashes her, quote-unquote killing her when in fact she was sent to the other side. He is confronted by Sunday, who had been investigating the case of something unto death and Gallagher himself for a good while. In the sadness of his sister's passing, he forgoes caution and puts all his cards on the table, something I'm sure he wouldn't have done with a level head. Less kind to him than he was with his sister, Gallagher bares his fangs as he decides to send Sunday to join his sister, since he wants to know so badly. But it won't be by his hand. If he wants to accuse him of the murders and draw the correlation to him and something unto death, then fine. With a flick of a lighter, Sunday is gone. Now, what will Gallagher and Misha do next? Decoding the 2.2 trailer, there's a part where in a resolute and determined tone, Himiko goes, "It's for Mikhail, and the future of Penacony." Perhaps it had reached a time where the Nameless have proven themselves, and they can forego the riddles, telling the Nameless the truth, the secrets they had been protecting and hiding. Whatever they say probably makes it all clear where the Nameless should stand on this, and their true calling to Penacony. Now, there are a lot of things I still haven't addressed about Gallagher. Additional theories, points found in the comments, additional references and symbols. For some, I'm like, well, this is fucking cool, smile. But I can't give a constructive answer to it. I'm brain fried on Gallagher after all of this, forgive me. But again, I encourage you to read all of this to yourself and even add more in the comments. I think until we get the answers, we should keep asking questions and finding more. And when we get more answers, we'll make more questions. Here's some honorable mentions, and I'll quickfire answer them. Gallagher representing the Joker of a deck of cards, which comes in a set of 4 suits and 52 cards overall. Makes a lot of sense. Gallagher is the anomaly and a wild card. It makes sense in terms of the story, where he suddenly revealed himself to be a massive player in the story, but we're all still theorizing as to what exactly. And he's a meme who's changed and transformed and imitated. In some games, the Joker card is tasked to do some of those things. It fits really well. Is he connected to any other faction that want their piece of the Dreamscape pie? I don't think so. In my opinion, Gallagher is a loyal dog to one master, and it's the Watchmaker. Death in the afternoon! Kaya mentioned Gra! There's honestly a lot, which makes it all more fascinating about Gallagher. Gallagher reminds me of a lot of games that I've played or watched. Heads up, I'll be spoiling some games, so click ahead to avoid it if it's something you don't want to hear. Now, he reminds me a lot of Disco Elysium, just the idea of multiple aspects of your mindscape and personality, narrating and collating your shots and your actions. It makes me think of Gallagher and how his own eternal thinking works as a meme. It's why I use a lot of Disco Elysium in the video's background music, and as inspiration for my art. The one that resonated with me the most, though, was Who's Lila? And in finding something that reminded me of Who's Lila, I've reawakened Lila in my brain. Who's Gallagher? How deep have we gone to truly figure him out? Have we found a conclusion for ourselves? Both are memes. Both are mysterious entities that manipulate the memory, who inhabit the subconscious. They are many things, but none of them in the same time. Memes are interesting like that. Befitting of the enigmata, it's not about seeking the answer, but thriving in the mystery, asking more and more questions, finding answers that aren't there, that are hidden under layers and layers of cryptic clues and phrases. And in that train of thought, I'd like to say, until we get the answers we seek in 2.2, or even 2.3, I would like to keep Gallagher, or some part of him, a mystery, some questions unanswered. I'm a little brain-fried and overwhelmed by how much he's hiding. But it's really because there's some sort of joy in the mystery, in questioning him, in being so haunted and enthralled by him. I find him both scary and beautiful. A horror to comprehend, but also a horror that gazing upon will make me lose my mind. I think in the spirit of Enigmata, Gallagher being a mystery that keeps unfolding more questions is befitting of their values. Regardless if you agree with me or not, I hope in these 2 videos I've expressed how much I'm in awe, but in horror I am of this character. Not in any moral aspect, but if I stare into that void that is Gallagher for too long, who knows what will happen.
Thank you for watching my video. I wish I was able to upload this a little less closer to the patch than I intended. But, you know, shit happens. I completely scared myself with how long this video ended up being. I really am a serial yapper when it comes to Gallagher, I guess.
Obviously in the future, I'd love to do more videos like this. Especially once after the Gallagher saga is done, maybe I can talk about other Hoyoverse characters, not just in Star Rail, but maybe Genshin as well. Maybe I'll even yap about some of my own personal interests that are outside of Hoyoverse. Depends if you're into that. While we wait for 2.2 to actually happen, why don't you watch some of my previous speed paints? Or you can see the insanity that was my Ilerkino pulling session. Good fucking lord. Anyway, like, subscribe, I guess. Bye.